A family that owns the dirt under your feet, but you've never heard their name. A family that lets billionaires drive their armored SUVs into a hidden tunnel so the world never sees their face. And a family so heavily fortified, they were handed the deepest foundations in the entire country. These are the 10 richest dynasties that secretly own Manhattan. And as we count down, the underground empires get crazier and crazier, because everyone's looking up at the glass towers, but the real power lives deep in the bedrock. 10 dynasties own the island's subterranean grid, the hidden catacombs, and the foundations of every skyscraper you see. They don't just own the skyline, they own the dirt it stands on. Starting with a family that treats its entire portfolio like a financial doomsday bunker. Number 10. The Resnick family. The bedrock anchors. Most people assume that to win in New York real estate, you have to be loud, slapping your name on the highest penthouse and fighting in the tabloids. But if you want to understand true, unshakable wealth, you have to look down. The Resnick family proves that treating your portfolio like a subterranean bunker, silent, heavily fortified, and hidden from view, is far more profitable than chasing fame. Founded by Jack Resnick in 1928, this family built an empire on a simple, unglamorous principle: anchor into the bedrock and never let go. While other flashy developers were flipping properties or leveraging themselves into bankruptcy during the market crashes of the 1980s and 2008, the Resnicks simply sealed the hatch. They focused on acquiring prime office space and residential towers, operating them like financial doomsday bunkers. They held on to everything. Today, run by Jonathan Resnick, Jack Resnick and Sons controls over 5 million square feet of heavily insulated commercial space, including the iconic One Seaport Plaza. But how was this massive wealth actually made? Their genius isn't in the glass windows of their towers, it's in the dirt. Decades ago, they bought the actual ground in neighborhoods like Hudson Square and Tribeca long before the areas became trendy. By owning the subterranean footprints of these neighborhoods, they effectively future-proofed their fortune against any economic collapse. How is this protected? Extreme lack of leverage. The Resnicks do not borrow heavily against their buildings. This is their power move. When the financial markets panic, the Resnicks sit comfortably in their low-debt fortresses, completely insulated from the chaos. What most people misunderstand about Manhattan real estate is that the game isn't about buy low, sell high. The ultimate status symbol in this city is buy low and never, ever sell. The Resnicks are the anchors in the schist. In a city full of gamblers, they are the unbreakable vault. Number 9. The Rose family. The residential vaults. If you have ever lived in a luxury rental in New York, there is a high probability you have navigated the highly secure, heavily guarded lobbies managed by the Rose family. For over 90 years, Rose Associates has defined how wealthy New Yorkers seal themselves off from the chaos of the streets. They are the architects of the elite's private residential bunkers. The dynasty was founded by brothers David and Samuel Rose in the 1920s. They looked at the soaring skyline and realized a fundamental truth. While people might go to work in public, transparent glass boxes, they want to retreat to impenetrable limestone fortresses when they sleep. The family's history is inextricably tied to the city's most ambitious housing projects. They were heavily involved in the management of Stuyvesant Town Peter Cooper Village, a complex so massively self-contained it functions like its own walled city, complete with its own private security networks and utility grids. Today, under the leadership of Amy Rose, the family manages over 14,000 units. But their true power move, and the ultimate display of their wealth generation, was the subterranean transformation of downtown Manhattan. They looked at the financial district, an area known for massive bank vaults and heavy stone architecture, and bet heavily on turning obsolete office buildings into luxury residential strongholds. Their crown jewel is 70 Pine Street. Once the global headquarters of AIG, this Art Deco masterpiece was built like an actual fortress, complete with deep basement vaults that once held corporate secrets and billions in gold and cash. The Rose family took this impenetrable structure and converted it into one of the most highly secure, desirable residential addresses in the city. How is their wealth protected? Through the ultimate recurring revenue model, managing the spaces where the elite retreat. What the public misunderstands is that the Rose family doesn't just manage apartments, they control the access points. They are the gatekeepers of privacy, providing the top 1% with insulated environments completely severed from the noise of the city above. Number 8. The Zeckendorf family. Limestone bunkers in the sky. There is wealthy, and then there is Zeckendorf wealthy. This family is responsible for engineering the modern standard of the ultra-luxury, highly fortified condo. If you see a building where a penthouse sells for $100 million, the Zeckendorfs probably poured the foundation. They don't build apartments, they build vertical bunkers for global oligarchs. The family dynasty began with William Zeckendorf Sr., a man so deeply embedded in the city's power structure that he once owned the actual dirt the United Nations stands on today. But the modern, multi-billion-dollar fortune was solidified by his grandsons, Arthur and William Lai Zeckendorf. Their undisputed masterpiece is 15 Central Park West. When they broke ground on this massive limestone tower in 2008, critics claimed they were digging their own financial graves. They spent billions to build a highly secure, pre-war style fortress from scratch, enlisting legendary architect Robert A.M. Stern. They actively rejected the modern trend of floor-to-ceiling glass. The world's wealthiest people do not want to be seen. They want thick limestone walls, heavy masonry, and structural permanence. They want to be shielded. The Zeckendorfs understood this psychological need for a high-altitude bunker perfectly. 15 Central Park West became the most successful residential building in the history of the world, generating over $2 billion in sales almost immediately. Hedge fund managers, celebrities, and foreign billionaires fought viciously for access. Their ultimate power move was the inclusion of a hidden subterranean motor court. Billionaires can have their armored SUVs drive into a heavily guarded underground tunnel, completely bypassing the paparazzi and the public on the street, before taking a private, secure elevator directly into their vault-like apartments. How do they protect this wealth? By cornering the market on extreme exclusivity. They went on to build 520 Park Avenue, another highly restricted billionaire silo. What most people misunderstand about the Zeckendorfs is that they aren't selling square footage. They are selling absolute security and invisibility. They know that true status isn't about being seen by everyone. It's about being entirely inaccessible. Number 7. The Fisher family. The hidden engine rooms. If you travel deep into the sub-basements of Park Avenue, past the massive HVAC systems and the redundant fiber optic cables, you will find the hidden engine rooms of corporate America. And those engine rooms belong to the Fisher brothers. They are the quiet giants, the unseen submarines navigating the depths of New York real estate. You almost never see them on the surface, but they carry massive, devastating financial firepower. The dynasty began in 1915 when Martin Fisher started building brick homes in Queens. But as the generations passed, the family's ambition tunneled deeper and scaled higher. By the mid-20th century, the Fishers were laying the massive bedrock foundations for Midtown Manhattan's most imposing corporate fortresses. Their portfolio is a heavily guarded list of structural behemoths: 299 Park Avenue, 605 Third Avenue, and 1,345 Avenue of the Americas. These are not vanity projects with flashy public observation decks. These are the heavily fortified command centers of global finance. These buildings house the headquarters of major international banks, white shoe law firms, and massive hedge funds. The Fisher family made their billions by providing the highly secure, heavily wired infrastructure that these corporations demand to operate. How is this staggering wealth protected? The Fisher family operates a financial bunker strategy defined by extreme liquidity. Unlike flashy, over-leveraged developers who panic when interest rates rise, the Fishers are known for hoarding massive, heavily guarded cash reserves. When the market crashes and other developers are forced to liquidate, the Fishers emerge from their bunker and go shopping for distressed assets. Their power move extends far beyond the concrete of their basements. It is deeply embedded in the city's political bedrock. The Fisher family has historically maintained incredibly deep, quiet ties to the city's powerful construction unions and political infrastructure. What the public entirely misunderstands is that the Fishers don't just collect rent checks from corporations. They act as political kingmakers. They sit in the underground rooms where zoning laws are written and city planning is dictated. Their wealth is vast, but their true status is defined by their absolute, invisible control over the city's operating system. Number 6. The Malkin family. The vault under the Empire State. Owning a massive skyscraper is an impressive feat of leverage. Owning the skyscraper, the global symbol of American dominance, is a completely different level of deeply entrenched power. The Malkin family controls the Empire State Building, and they have turned its foundation into one of the most lucrative money-printing vaults on the planet. For decades, the ownership of this iconic structure was a chaotic, tangled mess of complex ground leases, subleases, and viciously feuding partners. It was an absolute legal war zone that even Donald Trump famously tried and failed to conquer. But the Malkin family, led by the ruthless and highly strategic Anthony Malkin, fought a brutal, years-long war of attrition to consolidate control over the building's massive footprint and bring the entire operation public. In 2013, they launched the Empire State Realty Trust, ESRT, a move that acted as an impenetrable financial shield. By creating a publicly traded REIT, they fortified their holdings and valued the portfolio at over $4 billion. But the true genius, the ultimate power move of the Malkin family, isn't found in the towering spire. It is found in the building's heavily trafficked, bunker-like lower levels. Anthony Malkin realized that the Empire State Building is not actually an office building. It is an incredibly efficient, vertically integrated tourist trap. The observation deck and the maze-like subterranean retail corridors at the base of the building generate over $100 million a year in pure, unadulterated profit. This highly controlled, heavily secured funnel of global tourists effectively subsidizes the millions of square feet of office space above it. How do they protect this asset? Malkin has spent massive fortunes retrofitting the building's hidden infrastructure, tearing out antiquated systems and replacing them with eco-friendly grids, turning an aging 1930s monument into a heavily wired tech bunker capable of hosting giants like LinkedIn. What most people misunderstand is that the Malkin family's wealth isn't reliant on corporate leases. It is anchored by their absolute monopoly over the physical traffic flowing through the deepest levels of New York's most famous monument. Number 5. The Rudin family. The digital catacombs. To survive for a century in Manhattan, you cannot just own the walls, you must control the wiring. The Rudin family represents the ultimate bridge between old New York bedrock and the new tech digital catacombs. Founded by Samuel Rudin in 1925, this family operates with the mentality of absolute entrenchment. Their family motto is a strict mandate of preservation. We don't sell. They build. They buy. They anchor into the schist, and they hold forever. This relentless bunker strategy has amassed them a privately held portfolio of 16 massive office towers and 18 high-end apartment buildings. But under the leadership of Bill Rudin, the family executed a brilliant pivot that fundamentally altered how wealth is generated in the city. They looked at the deep basements of their aging office buildings and realized that the future of power wasn't in marble lobbies. It was in subterranean fiber optics. They became the first major Manhattan landlords to fully embrace the wired building concept, turning standard structures into high-tech fortresses. Their power move was the development of 3 Times Square. They didn't just build a tower, they engineered a digital bunker. They wired the building's deep subterranean levels with massive, redundant fiber optic networks, heavily fortified backup power generators, and secure server environments. They built a structure specifically designed to keep media and tech companies operational, even if the rest of the city's grid went totally dark. Simultaneously, they developed the Greenwich Lane in the West Village, a highly secure, billion-dollar residential compound built on the site of a former hospital. They created an insulated, walled-off garden environment with deep underground parking networks, allowing celebrities to exist completely shielded from the public. What most people misunderstand about the Rudins is their social power. They are the ultimate fixers of New York, operating as the deeply embedded diplomats between the city's billionaires and the public sector. Their wealth is estimated at over $5 billion, but their true power is the hidden infrastructure they control beneath the pavement. Number 4. The Speyer family, the Rockefeller Underground. If you truly want to understand the scale of subterranean ambition, you must study Jerry Speyer. He didn't just inherit a family portfolio of buildings, he aggressively purchased the very heart of the city's underground network. Tishman Speyer is one of the largest and most aggressive real estate owners on the globe, but their absolute crown jewel is the massive, sprawling complex of Rockefeller Center. In 1996, Jerry Speyer and his partners executed one of the most audacious maneuvers in real estate history, purchasing the Rockefeller Center complex for $1.2 billion. At the time, the public and the press thought he was digging his own financial grave. The complex was visibly aging, the street-level retail was struggling, and the massive underground concourse, a veritable subterranean city of tunnels and basements, was dingy and widely ignored. But Speyer saw the hidden matrix that everyone else missed. He realized that Rockefeller Center was an interconnected fortress. His ultimate power move was entirely overhauling the underground catacombs. He gutted the miles of subterranean tunnels connecting the buildings, heavily fortified the infrastructure, and brought in high-end, extremely lucrative retail tenants. He transformed a dusty, forgotten basement network into a heavily trafficked, massively profitable underground bunker system that funneled millions of wealthy tourists and office workers through his cash registers every single day. How does the Speyer family protect this incredible empire? Through global capitalization. Under the current leadership of Rob Speyer, they operate as heavily insulated global asset managers. They raise massive billion-dollar funds from highly secure international pension funds and secretive sovereign wealth funds, using that capital to buy entire neighborhoods and build new financial fortresses in cities from Shanghai to London. What the public entirely misunderstands about the Speyers is the true source of their dominance. People look at the famous ice skating rink or the towering Christmas tree, but the real power, the absolute financial engine of the Speyer empire, is churning in the heavily guarded, highly profitable subterranean tunnels buried far beneath the ice. Number 3. The LeFrak family, the subterranean cities. Most developers are content to build a single tower and call it a legacy. The LeFrak organization, currently commanded by the deeply private Richard LeFrak, operates on a completely different scale. They do not build buildings. They build entirely self-contained, heavily fortified zip codes from the bedrock up. The family fortune was excavated by Samuel LeFrak, a man who understood that true, unshakable wealth wasn't found in building fragile glass penthouses for the elite, but in constructing massive, inescapable infrastructure for the masses. His signature project was LeFrak City in Queens, a staggering fortress-like complex of 20 towering apartment buildings housing over 15,000 people. It was literally designed as a city within a city, functioning like a massive, above-ground bunker complete with its own private security forces, internal commercial networks, and independent utility grids. But the family's greatest power move, the maneuver that secured their status as multi-billionaires, was the creation of Newport in Jersey City. In the 1980s, Richard LeFrak looked across the Hudson River and saw acres of toxic, abandoned rail yards and rotting underground infrastructure. While others saw a wasteland, LeFrak saw a blank slate. He bought hundreds of acres of raw, contaminated dirt for pennies on the dollar. The LeFraks then spent decades digging deep. They remediated the soil, poured massive concrete foundations, and built entire subterranean networks of parking garages, power grids, and water lines before a single building went up. Today, Newport is a gleaming, fully integrated private city, effectively serving as the 6th borough of New York, and the LeFrak family owns every inch of its bedrock. How is their $6 billion fortune protected? The LeFraks are the ultimate doomsday preppers of the real estate world. They refuse to carry high debt because they operate with immense, highly guarded cash reserves and hold their assets for generations. They are entirely insulated from the banking crises that wipe out their heavily leveraged competitors. What people misunderstand is that the LeFraks aren't landlords. They are sovereign rulers of their own private, heavily infrastructural domains. Number 2. The Goldman family, owning the dirt itself. You have almost certainly never heard of Saul Goldman. You have definitely never heard of his daughter, Jane Goldman, who runs the empire today from an incredibly secretive, heavily guarded office. And that absolute total invisibility is exactly by design. They do not want the fame because they possess something far more powerful. If you walk down any street in Manhattan, you are likely walking directly over a subterranean vault, a basement, or a piece of bedrock strictly controlled by the Goldman family. Solal Management, the highly secretive firm operated by the Goldmans, controls the single largest portfolio of privately held real estate in New York City. We are talking about a staggering, deeply entrenched network of over 400 separate properties. Saul Goldman was an aggressive, obsessive acquirer of land in the 1960s and 70s. He did not care about the shiny glass windows, the marble lobbies, or the state of the building's roof. He cared exclusively about the dirt. His power move was the relentless acquisition of the island's raw bedrock. This strategy manifested in the ultimate financial bunker, the ground lease. The Goldmans own the literal earth beneath some of the city's most famous structures. They own the deep foundation under the Gramercy Park Hotel. They own the ground lease for the Olympic Tower. This is a mechanism of pure, unadulterated power. A ground lease means the Goldman family lets other wealthy developers spend hundreds of millions of dollars to build the skyscrapers, manage the temperamental tenants, and fix the elevators. The Goldmans simply sit in the shadows and collect massive, legally mandated rent checks just for the right to let those buildings touch their dirt. How do they protect this wealth? It is mathematically untouchable. A ground lease is arguably the safest, most impenetrable financial bunker ever devised. If a developer goes bankrupt, the building defaults directly to the Goldmans. What people completely misunderstand about Manhattan is that the billionaires in the penthouses are still just renters. Jane Goldman's personal net worth is estimated at over $3 billion, but the family's total underground assets are practically incalculable. They are the invisible subterranean kings of the city. Number 1. The Durst Family, the deepest foundations. At the very top of the food chain, guarding the most heavily fortified and deeply anchored assets in the United States, sits the Durst family. They are the ultimate synthesis of everything we have explored. The staggering scale, the generational patience, the dark, hidden secrets, and the sheer structural dominance over the city's bedrock. The Durst organization, commanded by Douglas Durst, strictly controls over 13 million square feet of premier, highly secure Manhattan office space. The dynasty began in 1915 with Joseph Durst, an Austrian immigrant, but it was his son, Seymour Durst, who engineered the family's brutal, subterranean strategy. Seymour was renowned for his terrifying patience. He operated like a covert operative, secretly using shell companies to buy up tiny brownstones, failing delis, and small patches of dirt, one by one, over the course of decades. He hid his acquisitions from the public until he suddenly controlled entire, unbroken city blocks. This relentless assembly of bedrock allowed the family to construct their massive corporate monoliths, One Bryant Park and the Condé Nast building in Times Square. But their status as the absolute rulers of the city is cemented by one specific, heavily fortified asset: One World Trade Center. Following the devastating attacks of 9/11, the site was a massive, empty crater. When the Port Authority needed a private partner with the immense capital, the deep political connections, and the ruthless efficiency required to rebuild the deepest foundations in the city, they called the Dursts. In 2010, the Durst organization took over the management and acquired an equity stake. Their power move was overseeing the construction of the ultimate above-ground bunker. The base of One World Trade Center is a literal fortress, designed with heavily reinforced bomb-proof concrete walls, descending deep into the Manhattan schist to secure the structure against any imaginable threat. By putting their name on the Freedom Tower, the Dursts effectively became the absolute landlords of the Western Hemisphere's tallest, most highly secured building. Their fortune exceeds $8 billion, guarded by deeply entrenched family trusts. But their history is also shadowed by dark, highly publicized secrets, most notably the saga of Robert Durst, whose alleged murders expose the terrifying insulated nature of extreme wealth. What the public entirely misunderstands is that the Dursts do not just own tall buildings, they control the most structurally invincible, heavily fortified, and historically significant bedrock in the world. They prove that in New York City, true power isn't built in the sky. It is buried deep underground. The glass towers of Manhattan are just the surface. The real power is buried deep underground in the bedrock, guarded by impenetrable ground leases, hidden family trusts, and literal subterranean vaults. These 10 dynasties have turned the city's physical foundations into an unbreakable, generation-spanning financial bunker. Whose underground empire do you think is the most untouchable? Let me know below. Subscribe to Global Status to explore more hidden fortresses of the global elite, and check the shopping shelf below for more intel.